The moment I walked into the Langston Enterprises boardroom, I knew something was off. The air felt heavier than usual, and the executives around the long glass table weren't making small talk. They avoided eye contact, fiddling with pens and notepads like nervous school kids. I adjusted my tie and tried to shake off the unease. "Morning," I said, flashing what I thought was a confident smile. "I hope this is just a quick review because I've got a call lined up with the Hudson account." No one responded, not even Victor Langston, the man who had given me my first big break 5 years ago, and also my father-in-law. He sat at the head of the table, perfectly still, his sharp gray suit as immaculate as his cold expression. "Daniel," Victor finally said, folding his hands on the table. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "We need to discuss your future with the company." Something in my gut tightened. My future? "Victor, I just closed the Bennett contract last week. We're talking a multi-million-dollar deal. What's going on?" He leaned back, his eyes narrowing with a faint hint of satisfaction. "This isn't about the Bennett contract. It's about overall performance." Performance. The word didn't make sense. I had been the company's top negotiator for 3 straight years. My record was spotless. "I don't understand," I said, my voice dipping, betraying the knot forming in my throat. "If this is about the last quarterly numbers, you know they were impacted by supply issues, not my team's." Victor raised a hand, cutting me off. "Daniel, this isn't a debate. Your performance has been lacking. And after discussing it with the board, we believe it's time to part ways." The silence that followed hit me harder than his words. My mind reeled. I looked around the table, searching for someone, anyone, to speak up. No one did. Their faces were stone masks. "Are you serious?" I said finally, my voice louder than I intended. "Lacking? I've brought in more revenue than anyone else in this room. You know that." Victor smirked, a thin, cruel curve of his lips. "We appreciate your contributions, Daniel. That's why I've arranged for a generous severance package." Generous severance, like I was some charity case. I swallowed hard, heat crawling up my neck. "You're firing me," I said, my voice low. "After 5 years of breaking my back for this company, for your company?" Victor didn't flinch. "Consider it a business decision. You'll find the details in your email." For a moment, I couldn't move. 5 years of loyalty, late nights, and missed anniversaries. All gone in the time it took him to say the word "part ways." My jaw clenched as I stood up, my chair scraping the polished floor. As I walked out of the boardroom, the hollow thud of my shoes echoed through the hallway. I felt like I was leaving behind not just a job, but everything I had built for myself. By the time I stepped out of the corporate tower into the bright morning light, one thought burned in my mind. Something bigger was at play. Victor's cold eyes, that smug remark about generosity, the silence of the board. I knew this wasn't just business. This was personal, and I wasn't going to forget it. I don't remember the drive home. The city blurred past me, a mess of honking cars and flashing lights, but I barely saw any of it. My mind kept looping Victor's smug face, his tone like he was doing me a favor by tossing me out. By the time I pulled into the garage of our high-rise apartment, my hands were trembling on the steering wheel. Claire was sitting on the white leather couch when I walked in, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Our place looked like a furniture catalog. Clean lines, glass surfaces, and zero warmth. Every inch of it was hers, from the abstract paintings to the sharp-smelling candles I never liked. "I need to tell you something," I started, my voice uneven. I set my briefcase down, still waiting for her usual soft smile, the one that said, "We'll figure this out together." Instead, she didn't even look up. "Victor called," she said, her tone light, almost bored. "He told me about this morning." My heart sank. "Claire, I don't understand any of this. He said it was performance issues, but you know that's not true. I've been—" She cut me off with a laugh, a sharp, cruel sound. "Performance issues, loyalty, contracts. Do you really think that matters? My father wanted you out. That's all there is to it." I stared at her, trying to process the words. "What are you talking about?" "Why would he—" "Because you were never going to be more than what you are," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "A useful employee, a stepping stone." Her words hit me harder than anything Victor had said. I took a step back, as if she'd physically struck me. "Claire, you don't mean that." She reached for an envelope on the coffee table and tossed it toward me. "There's a place on 8th Avenue, a men's shelter. They'll take you in, since you don't exactly have anywhere else to go now." I looked down at the paper, stunned. "What is this? What the hell are you doing?" She tilted her head, that cold smile never faltering. "You're useless without your job, Daniel. You really think I married you for love? You were convenient, ambitious, and my father liked you, at first." The silence that followed was suffocating. I wanted to yell, to throw something, but all I could do was grab my old duffel bag from the closet. I stuffed a few clothes into it while she watched, arms crossed, as if this was just another chore. When I walked out, the hallway felt colder than it had that morning. In a matter of hours, I'd lost everything: my career, my home, and the woman I thought I knew. But beneath the hollow ache in my chest, something else stirred. A storm was brewing. The motel room smelled like damp carpet and cigarette smoke, even though the sign outside promised non-smoking rooms. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips, revealing patches of plaster that looked like old scars. For 7 days, I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, staring at those cracks, letting every betrayal claw its way through my mind. I barely slept. I didn't shave. I didn't bother with meals beyond the vending machine in the hallway. At night, I'd lie on my back and watch the ceiling fan spin lazily, wondering how the hell my life had unraveled so fast. I kept thinking about calling Claire, even just to hear her voice, but I always stopped myself. What would she say? Probably laugh, maybe tell me I was pathetic. I pictured her sipping champagne in the penthouse while I sat here, a ghost of the man I'd been just a week ago. The memories kept replaying like a cruel highlight reel. Victor's fake sympathy as he fired me. Claire's smirk when she called me useless. The way everyone I thought I could trust had turned on me without hesitation. It was like they'd been waiting for me to fail. By day 3, I was done being angry. What I felt now was something colder, numbness, maybe. I wasn't just humiliated, I was invisible. I'd been thrown away like trash. But on the 8th day, everything shifted. I was half asleep when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. At first, I thought it was just spam, but then I saw the number of missed calls, 200 and counting. Half were from Claire, the rest from Victor. My voicemail icon blinked like a warning light. I sat up slowly, a grim smile spreading across my face. Whatever had them panicking, I knew it had nothing to do with concern for me. Something had changed, something they couldn't control, and that's when I remembered who I really was. Before I married Claire, before I ever set foot in Langston Enterprises, I was Daniel Mercer, son of a family that built half the supply chain this city depended on. Our distribution network stretched across industries, and companies like Victor's didn't just rely on them, they survived because of them. I had walked away from that legacy years ago, wanting to prove I could succeed on my own. I thought loyalty and hard work would earn me respect. I was wrong. But now I realized what kind of power I'd been sitting on all along. I scrolled past Claire's desperate texts and tapped a different number. My private banker picked up on the first ring. "Mr. Mercer, it's been a while." "Not for long," I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. "Call the family legal team. I want everything reviewed. Contracts, loans, debts tied to Langston Enterprises. I want leverage." "Understood," he replied without hesitation. As I hung up, I looked around the shabby room one last time. The peeling wallpaper didn't bother me anymore. It was just a temporary stop. Because the next time Victor Langston saw me, I wouldn't be the man he fired. I'd be the man he couldn't destroy. I didn't announce my return. I wanted Claire to see me without warning, without the chance to hide behind one of her carefully rehearsed masks. When the elevator doors opened onto the penthouse floor, I felt a calmness settle over me. A sharp, deliberate calm that came from knowing I finally held the upper hand. The apartment looked the same, but the energy had shifted. The perfect decor now felt hollow, like a stage set for a play no one wanted to watch anymore. Claire was on the couch, hair undone, makeup smudged, clutching a glass of wine even though it was barely noon. When she saw me, her face brightened for a moment, then hardened. "Daniel," she said, forcing a smile. "I was worried. You just disappeared." "Don't," I cut in, setting my duffel bag on the floor. "We both know you weren't worried." Her fake concern cracked, and her lips curled into a sneer. "What is this act now? Are you here to beg for me back? To tell me how you can't live without me?" I stayed silent, watching her squirm under my gaze. She didn't like silence. It made her nervous. Sure enough, she filled it with venom. You know what your problem is, Daniel? You're boring. God, you were never enough for me. Do you want to know the truth? I've had better conversations with men I actually wanted to be with. Men who aren't pathetic. The words hit like bullets, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my coat and placed a folder on the coffee table. The car's no longer yours, I said evenly. Neither is this apartment, or the credit cards. I've already made the calls. She blinked as if she hadn't heard me correctly. What? I leaned forward slightly. You've been living off me for years, Claire. Every luxury you flaunted was paid for by me. That ends today. Her confidence faltered, the color draining from her face. You can't just... Oh, I can, I said, my tone as cold as steel. And I did. For a moment, all I heard was her uneven breathing. Then she tried one last angle, anger. My father will ruin you for this. I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that made her flinch. Your father's empire? It's built on my family's distribution network. Do you think Victor will still be laughing when I pull the ground out from under him? For the first time since I'd known her, Claire looked genuinely afraid. She said nothing as I walked to the door. I didn't need to hear her anymore. The reckoning had only just begun. The boardroom looked exactly as I remembered it. The sleek glass table, the panoramic city view, the faint scent of overpriced cologne hanging in the air. It was the same room where Victor Langston had humiliated me, but today everything felt different. Today I wasn't here as an employee. I was here as the man holding the strings. The executives were already seated when I walked in. Their conversation stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening at the sight of me. Victor sat at the head of the table, sipping his coffee like a king certain of his throne. That smug expression wavered when he saw me stride in with my legal team and 2 representatives from my family's trust. "What the hell are you doing here?" Victor demanded, setting his cup down. His tone was sharp, but tinged with something else, uncertainty. I placed a leather folder on the table, deliberately taking the seat at the head. His seat. "Good morning, everyone. I called this meeting to discuss some ownership changes." The room went silent. I could feel the weight of their confusion, the tension crackling like static electricity. Victor laughed, but it sounded forced. "Ownership changes? You don't work here anymore, Daniel. I fired you in case you forgot." "Oh, I remember," I said, leaning back with an easy calm I didn't have weeks ago. "What you didn't know is that Langston Enterprises owes a significant amount of its operational credit lines to distribution contracts owned by my family. And while you were busy congratulating yourself on getting rid of me, I spent the last week buying up the company's outstanding debt and shares through that same trust." I slid the documents across the table. The board members glanced at them, and one by one, their eyes widened. Victor snatched the papers, scanning them furiously. This is impossible." "It's not impossible," I replied. "It's business. And as of this morning, I control 61% of Langston Enterprises shares and leverage over all major distribution channels." The room erupted in murmurs. Victor's face turned red. "You think you can walk in here and—" "I'm not asking," I cut him off, my voice sharp but steady. "This board has already voted. As of now, you're removed as CEO. Security will escort you out." For a moment, Victor just stared at me, as if the reality hadn't sunk in. Then he stood, slamming his hands on the table. "You ungrateful little—" "Enough," I said calmly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The 2 security guards by the door stepped forward, ready. Victor's jaw tightened. He looked around the room, waiting for someone to defend him, but the board members stayed silent. No one moved. "This isn't over," he spat as the guards led him toward the door. "Yes, it is," I said quietly. As the door closed behind him, I stood and faced the board. From this moment on, we're rebuilding this company the right way. The Langston era is over, and for the first time in weeks, I felt whole again. The penthouse looked different when I walked in this time. It didn't feel like home anymore, just a showroom filled with expensive furniture and cold memories. Claire was waiting for me, sitting on the edge of the bed in a silk robe, her phone in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. She glanced up with a mix of anger and relief. "You finally decided to show up," she said, her tone dripping with false confidence. "Do you have any idea what kind of hell I've been dealing with because of you?" I didn't bother answering. I set a manila envelope on the bed beside her. "Hey, sign those," I said. My voice was flat, almost emotionless. "They're divorce papers." Her smirk faltered. "What? Daniel, this is insane. We can work this out. I shook my head. There's nothing to work out. You made your choice the moment you threw me out like I was trash. She set her glass down, leaning forward. I didn't mean what I said. My father, he pushed me to say those things. You know how controlling he is. I love you, Daniel. I always have. Her voice cracked on the last sentence, but I saw right through it. It was the same tone she used when she wanted something, the same act I'd fallen for too many times. Don't, I said quietly. You don't get to rewrite history now. Her desperation began to show. You're making a mistake. We can fix this. We can go back to how things were. I stepped closer, looking her straight in the eye. There is no going back. The apartment's in my name. You can stay here if you want, but the accounts are frozen, the car's gone, and the cards are canceled. Whatever comfort you had, it's gone. She stared at me, like I had just slapped her. You can't just cut me off like that. Oh, I can, I said, and I have. For a long moment, she was silent. Then she stood, her expression hardening into pure venom. You'll regret this, she hissed. You think you're stronger than my father, but you're not. He'll crush you. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. I build better without you. With that, I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, shaking with fury. As the door closed behind me, the weight I'd carried for years lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. It was almost 3 weeks after the takeover when I got a call from a number I hadn't seen in years. Daniel Mercer? The voice asked. It was familiar, though rougher than I remembered. Ethan? I said, leaning back in my office chair. Ethan Carter, my old college roommate. The guy who once said he'd owe me for life after I covered his last semester's tuition. We hadn't spoken in years, but I could hear the urgency in his tone. I need to see you, he said. It's about Claire and Victor. It's worse than you think. We met at a small bar on the east side, the kind of place where no one cared who you were. Ethan slid into the booth, looking older but sharper than I remembered. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. He set a flash drive on the table. What's this? I asked. Proof, he said. I did some contract work for Langston Enterprises a few months back. While I was there, I saw something, and I couldn't ignore it. I plugged the drive into my laptop back at the office. What I saw made my stomach turn. Claire and Victor meeting in hotels, whispering about making sure Daniel's out of the picture, and laughing about how he'll never see it coming. They had been planning my removal for months, long before the day Victor fired me. Every word confirmed what I had suspected, but didn't want to believe. Claire had never been a victim of her father's influence. She was his partner in every betrayal. I stared at the screen for a long time, my jaw tight, my fingers frozen on the trackpad. Ethan's voice broke through the haze. I thought you deserved to know the truth. Whatever you're planning, Daniel, make it count. And I did. 2 days later, the first leak hit the press. A video clip of Victor and Claire discussing company maneuvers that skirted legal boundaries. By the end of the week, the full set of files was released anonymously to major financial and tech outlets. It was a scandal big enough to shake the industry. Langston Enterprises' stock price nosedived overnight, wiping out millions. Victor tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was too clear, too damning. The board convened an emergency meeting and forced his resignation. I didn't even need to show up. He was finished. Claire, on the other hand, vanished from public life almost immediately. Her social media accounts were deleted. The expensive parties she used to host stopped cold. The last I heard, she had been spotted leaving one of her father's vacation homes with nothing but a single suitcase. I didn't feel joy when I saw the headlines. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. They thought they could use me, discard me, and laugh behind my back. Now, the entire world knew who they really were. As I stood in my new office, watching the chaos unfold from a distance, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: clarity. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant buzzed in. "Mr. Mercer," she said softly. "Claire Langston is here to see you." For a moment, I just stared at the phone. I hadn't heard her name spoken out loud in weeks. I almost told my assistant to send her away, but something in me wanted to see this through, this final chapter. "Send her in," I said. When Claire stepped into my office, I barely recognized her. The sharp, polished woman who once lived for designer dresses and expensive jewelry was gone. She looked smaller somehow, wearing plain jeans and a wrinkled sweater, her hair pulled back like she hadn't cared enough to fix it. Her eyes met mine, and I saw something I had never seen before: defeat. "Daniel," she said quietly, almost whispering, "I needed to see you." I leaned back in my chair, my hands folded. "I can't imagine why." She took a tentative step closer. "I've lost everything. My father's gone, the company's gone, and I don't even know where to go anymore. I wanted to tell you I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I asked, my voice even but sharp. "Sorry for using me as a pawn? Sorry for siding with your father while he burned everything down around you?" Her lips trembled. "I was stupid. I let him control me. But I loved you, Daniel. I still do." I didn't say anything right away. I studied her, this broken version of the woman who once looked at me like I was nothing. "No," I said finally. "You loved the version of me that fit into your world, the man who gave you a life you didn't have to work for. And when you thought I was no longer useful, you tossed me out." She flinched at the words, but she didn't argue. Instead, she lowered her voice to a desperate whisper. "Can we just start over? Please!" I stood, walking around the desk until I was just a few feet from her. "There's nothing to start over, Claire. I gave you years of my life, and you buried every bit of trust we had. What's left to fix?" Her eyes glossed over as tears welled up. "You'll regret this," she said softly, like a final plea. I shook my head. "No, Claire. The only thing I'd regret is letting you back in." She didn't respond. She just nodded once, turned, and walked out of my office without looking back. I watched her leave, the silence in her absence feeling final. The chapter was closed, and for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt free. Months later, I found myself sitting behind the massive oak desk in my new corner office. The view stretched across the city skyline, sunlight glinting off the glass towers like a promise of new beginnings. It still felt strange sometimes, this office, this authority. But it wasn't hollow like before. It wasn't about proving myself to anyone anymore. The board respected me now. Industry leaders who once sided with Victor now called me for advice, not out of fear, but because they recognized my vision. I wasn't just holding the reins of Langston Enterprises, I was reshaping it into something better. What surprised me most was how my revenge, as sweet as it had once seemed, wasn't what satisfied me in the end. It wasn't Victor's downfall or Claire's vanishing act that brought me peace. It was the freedom, the ability to steer my own life, my own company, on my own terms. I funneled a significant part of my fortune into charities, starting with the very men's shelter Claire had once mocked me about. Walking into that place, seeing the faces of people who needed a hand to get back up, reminded me of the man I wanted to be, one who built instead of destroyed. One evening, I stopped by that shelter and wrote a check big enough to cover renovations and programs for the next 3 years. The director's face lit up, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something pure. Satisfaction, not from vengeance, but from helping someone who wouldn't stab me in the back. Life outside of work was quieter now. I had my own apartment, nothing overly flashy, just a modern space with warm colors and a view of the park. Sometimes I'd sit on the balcony at night, listening to the city hum below, and wonder how I ever let myself be blinded by the kind of love Claire offered. It wasn't love, it was a contract, a trap I'd willingly walked into. One Friday night, I went to a small diner a few blocks from my office, the kind of place where the coffee was always hot and the servers knew your name. I sat alone at a corner booth, sipping black coffee and watching people go about their lives. There was something grounding about it, like I was finally living in the present instead of chasing someone else's approval. For the first time in years, I felt at peace with who I was. Not the man Victor dismissed, not the husband Claire manipulated, but Daniel Mercer. A man who had been broken, betrayed, and rebuilt stronger. As I paid my bill and stepped out into the cool evening air, I smiled. My life was finally mine. No ghosts, no grudges. Just the road ahead, waiting for me to shape it.